let's look at all the row operations that you can do on matrices. Later on, in a different video, I'll show you how to actually apply the row operations, but for right now, let's see what the actual row operations are. The first row operation is that you can switch any two rows. So what you can do here is we can take two rows, and let's say I want to take row 1 and row 3. I'm going to take row 1, I'm going to write row 1 can be switched with row 3. So then what you will do is I like to write out the rows that are not being changed. So I'm not actually changing row 2. So the 2, 7, 6 will stay there. And then what we're going to do is we are going to switch whatever row 1 and row 3 are. So row 3 becomes row 1, and row 1 becomes row 3. So we're just going to switch the two rows. That's helpful because in the top left corner, we're going to learn that we want that to be a 1. So if you have a 1 in the first spot but it's not in the top, you can switch the rows and have that be a 1. Okay, the second row operation is that you can multiply or divide any row by a constant here. And let's take, we're in blue still, let's take row 2 and let's divide it by 2. And that's going to be our new row 2. So what we have here is I'm going to write the rows that did not get changed. So because I'm only dividing row 2, or really I'm multiplying it by 1/2, but you can just write that it's dividing, it's not going to change anything. So I'm not changing row 1 or row 3. I'm going to take row 2, and I'm going to divide everything by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 7 divided by 2 is 7/2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So we've taken that row and divided every entry in the row by 2. Alright, this third operation is the hardest one to grasp, so we'll do a couple examples of it so you can really understand it. It says you can add any row or multiple of that row into another row to change the ladder. So what I could do here is, let's say that I wanted this 2 to become a 0. You could take this 1, multiply this 1 by a -2 and add it to the second one, and you will get that 2 to be a 0. So what that looks like is I would go -2 row 3 plus row 2 will become my new row 2. So you're actually not changing row 3 at all. You are just going to use row 3 as a tool to change row 2. So that means I'm going to write the rows that I am not changing here. I am not changing row 3 or row 1. Row 2 will get changed. So some people like to write here a -2 in front of in front of the row that you're using to remember that you need to multiply everything by in row 3 by -2. So what we do is we have here negative or 1 times -2 is -2. And then we're going to add that into row 2. So we've got -2 plus 2 is 0. Then let's do the next one. 1 times -2 is -2. -2 plus 7 is 5. Now the next one, -5. -5 times -2 is 10. 10 plus 6 is 16. So we used that row to row 3 as a tool to change row 2. But we're actually in our final product here, we are not going to alter row 3 at all. So let's look at one more example of that. I'm actually going to here change 2 rows at once. So one thing you could do, so let's say we have row 1. Row 1 is 1, 3, 6, 7. I can take row 1 and row 2 and I can add them together. So if I go row 1 plus row 2 is my new row 2. That means that I have here 1, 3, 6, and 7 is not going to be changed. So let's go and we'll go row 1 plus row 2. So we'll go 1 plus -1 is 0. 3 plus 4 is 7. 6 plus 2 is 8. 7 plus 0 is 7. Okay, so you can use row 1 to change row 2. The next thing we could do, let's take a look. Let's say I want that 5 to be a 0. Well, if I have 1 times what would cancel out with 5? That's a -5. So I could go -5 row 1 plus row 3 can be my new row 3. So I'm going to multiply this by -5. I don't know why that keeps showing up. Okay, so we're going to multiply this by -5 here. So 1 times -5 is -5, plus this 5 would be 0. 3 times -5 is -15. -15 plus 4 is -11. 6 times -5 is -30. -30 plus 3, that's here, -30 plus -3 will be -33. And the last one here is -5 times 7 is -35. -35 plus 1 is -34. So I changed 2 rows at one time, but you can use them to alter. You can use this first row here as a tool to change the other rows by multiplying these rows by a constant and then adding the multiple times the row plus the row you're trying to change to become my new row.